Chair Wheeler, we're live.
Okay, very good. So this will call to order the GPC meeting of Thursday, March 10th at 5:35. Why don't we begin? Welcome. I'm Ann Wheeler. I am from Prince William County. I'm filling in for two other people who aren't here today, and we'll try to get through our business accordingly. I do believe we have a quorum. Do we need to take a roll call?
We don't, Chair Wheeler, you don't have a quorum, so you can question items, but there can't be any official action.
So we don't have a quorum.
You don't have a quorum.
Okay.
And we will not have a quorum.
Okay, good to know. Okay, well, that brings us to, so we
have to pass over the
we have to
minutes.
pass over the minutes too. Okay, thank you. As a point of privilege, I'm just going to ask that we go to number 4 first on the agenda, which is the annual performance review for the Chief Executive Officer. Mr. Longview, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Chair Wheeler. I just wanted to, this is the same process we effectively used last year. You'll get firm direction from Chair Randall. But what I'm looking for is at this point, we typically have monitored the self-evaluation on performance goals. Those are sent out. The authority members are asked to reply with an assessment of comments on performance. We'd like Chair Wheeler to keep this on schedule, to be able to make that request at the authority meeting, that those comments be back at the end of the week. Other than that, other than all of the complexities of going through the consulting report and stuff like that, we're looking to follow pretty much the same process as last year, that we will rely on that consulting report to advise the authority in executive session.
So the announcement during the regular meeting of the MBTA will be that the CEO will do a self-assessment at the beginning of April. They will then be sent out to the board and expect board comments and feedback by the end of April. Is any comments on that or any other thoughts? Okay. Great. Well, that takes care of item number 4 then, and we can report out on that during the general meeting. Which brings us to the 2022 General Assembly session update. And I see Ms. Baynard is on the screen, who's going to give us our update for the General Assembly session, which is almost over. I'm sure it's not. So,
Good evening, Chair Wheeler and members of the committee. Sort of a couple of things. Yes, sine die or adjournment is scheduled for Saturday, but I'm not sure they'll be finished with reaching the conference report on the budget. If that happens, they'll likely recess recess on Saturday and then come back next week when they have the conference report. By their rules, they like to provide a 48-hour gap between when the amendments are posted and when they come vote. So they're working diligently to try to reconcile differences between the House and Senate budget. Top of that list of issues that need to be resolved is really how much revenue there'll be available, and that is pretty much driven by what they determine to do on several tax relief bills, the grocery tax repeal, one-time individual income tax refunds, and also related to income tax exemptions related to military retirement pay. So there are a number of really large issues, and then of course they have to reconcile how to spend all that. So we are actively looking forward to sine die happening sometime soon. After they do adjourn and all the bills are headed to the governor will have until midnight on April 11th to send forth any amendments or vetoes of bills. And then General Assembly will reconvene on April 27th to take up and respond to the governor's proposed amendments or vetoes. So that's where we are from a schedule perspective. As for things that have more direct impact on the authority and or transportation funding, you will recall that Senate Bill 251 from Senator Surville was an attempt to try to find dedicated funding for bike pedestrian facilities or traffic calming initiatives that were not connected to a road widening. As introduced, the bill would have diverted regional revenue directly from the authority I'm happy to say that after talking with the senator and talking with other members of General Assembly, both the authority, your local liaisons, the business community, convinced him that that was not the right thing to do. And so he had amended his bill to be essentially a study that VDOT would conduct. VDOT was charged with convening a set of stakeholders, including the authority, to look at trying to identify specific 20-year bike pedestrian traffic calming needs in Planning District 8, what revenue sources were available, how much money would be to pay for those, with a report coming from VDOT to be delivered in 2023. That passed out of the Senate handily. When the bill got to the House, it was reported out of the committee, out of the County, Cities, and Towns Committee. But when it got to the floor, the leadership of the House Transportation Committee asked for the bill to be re-referred to House Transportation. That happened yesterday, meaning that they will have missed the deadline to take up Senate bill. So essentially the concept is dead for this year. That is similar to what happened in House Transportation for any new studies or requirements on VDOT or DRPT. The leadership of the House Transportation Committee, Delegate Terry Austin, didn't want the new administration to have a lot of new things yet on transportation, wanting to allow them a year to get settled in. So for now, that effort is no longer existing. In terms of transportation funding overall, I know your liaisons have talked to you about this. There were a number of bills introduced at the beginning of the session. The bills to delay for 1 year or send back for 1 year, retract for 1 year, the latest increase in gas tax. Those bills were defeated in the Senate, House and Senate bills, but the House has language to that effect in their budget. So that'll be a budget conference item. I'm not sure it'll survive. What is still there is in the repeal of the grocery tax, in the repeal of the grocery tax, there is a repeal of 0.5 or 0.5% on the sales and use tax for groceries that creates money for the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. Depending on which version of the bill, that is either $188 million or a $252 million loss of transportation revenue over the biennium, and then roughly $138 million a year after that. So the House and Senate are trying to reconcile those two bills as we speak, and we're not really sure which way that is go. A lot of stakeholders are very concerned about the loss of ongoing revenue for transportation for a number of reasons, both how it supports operating and capital funds for transit, how it supports planning and capital funds for roads and transit. And so there's an effort underway, because it doesn't seem like any member of General Assembly who's controlling this process wants to address identifying a new ongoing dedicated revenue source right now. Instead, we're hoping that we can get them to embrace the idea that the General Assembly will get an assessment of how we're doing long-term on transportation funding by a specific date, certainly shorter than 10 years. And the rationale for that is in 2020, when we adopted the Omnibus Transportation Bill, reconfigured, provided additional money and dedicated revenue sources for transportation, it was with the knowledge that we were bringing sustainability to transportation for at least a decade. And clearly, the loss of the funding under the grocery tax is going to undo that a bit. So the idea is coming back within the next 5 to 6 years and really understanding where we are on transportation funding. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions on those two items specifically, and then I just have a couple more things I would bring up with you.
Any questions for Ms. Nader? Mr. Alcorn.
Thank you. So on that, what you were just talking about, so the best guess is the conference report will end up with something between those two figures Is that right, or one or the other?
Yeah, I actually think we'll end up with one or the other on that. Those two figures in terms of what we would lose over the biennium is based on when the grocery tax repeal goes into effect. The House bill has it going into effect, well, a couple of different things. Well, actually for transportation doesn't matter. The House bill has it going to effect July 1, 2022. The Senate bill has it going into effect January 1, 2023.
Well, it is unfortunate that we don't have a dedicated backstop on that.
Completely agree, sir.
We're not happy about it in Fairfax.
No, and I will say that a number of our members of our Northern Virginia delegation on the House and Senate side have voiced that concern on the floor in committee, but as I say, those who are in charge of this process are, how do I want to put this, are comfortable that at least over the biennium, there will not be a significant drop off. But as Supervisor Alcorn expresses, it's not the short term that we're concerned about, it's the long term.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. As you might recall, that there's the Transit Ridership Incentive Program, that's TRIP, which is providing state funds for two specific type of programs. One is to support local transit systems pilots for zero or low fare, and the second one is to support long distance commuter transit initiatives in large metropolitan areas, essentially really what we do here in Northern Virginia. There are two bills, one from Delegate McQuinn and one from Senator Barker, which amend the TRIP program in a few ways that I think are helpful and make a lot of sense. Together, the bills would guarantee that at least 25% of the funds are available for zero or low fare initiatives. Right now, the program is oversubscribed for those initiatives. And so this would allow more of the funding that's in the program to be used for that. Two, it would make sure that at least 25% of the funds are used for regional transit, long distance commuter transit initiatives. Again, good. They haven't gotten as much inquiry for those type of initiatives, but we know that ridership will come back as people head back to the office. And then the remaining 50% of the funds are distributed at the discretion of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. In that same vein, the Senate budget actually included $10 million over the biennium for regional transit long distance commuter routes. So again, something that would be available, probably mostly requested by systems here in Northern Virginia, like the Omnibus bus and others. So we'll see whether that survives the budget conference. And then we actually were able to hopefully avoid a concern over the Transportation Alternatives Programs, the TAP program. That is a federal program that is administered by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. All of you all have used that program for a variety of projects, from sidewalks to safe to schools, to trails, to traffic calming, to bike share projects. It's really been very popular in Northern Virginia. And the Senate budget included language and funding to start up a state office of trails. These are multi-use, usually multiple jurisdictional regional trails. They had initially proposed, or they had proposed in their budget as a way to start funding for that program to take $20 million, I'm sorry, actually $40 million over the biennium from the TAP program. Working with Noel Dominguez from Fairfax County, we were looking through the numbers and we thought that that was such a large number that it was going to eat into the specific funding for TAP that goes to our MPO. We did our research. We are correct. It is eating into our local Northern Virginia money. And so we shared that new data, the new updated revenue sources with Finance Committee staff so that they would have the right numbers. We were assured that that was not the intention. The intention was to use net new money. And so hopefully they now have those new numbers. We'll leave our regional dollars alone. But again, that it's only in the Senate budget, so that still has to be worked out in conference. And that's really all I have at this time, unless there are any other questions.
Any other questions from Ms. Boehner? Thank you. And I know that your report in here is much longer with many detail if anybody had anything specific that they wanted to go through. So thank you for preparing that. Okay, well, I guess we'll see you back during the regular meeting. So, but thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay. Closed session. Do we have anything for closed session? We do not. Okay. Is there any other business anybody would like to talk about before we adjourn? No motion to adjourn. Anyone want to make that motion? Is there a second? Actually, can we even vote on adjourning? Yeah, right. Never mind. I want to make sure we stop our recording, so this will make us officially adjourned. Thank you.
We'll announce on the live stream though. While they're doing that, I'll note